My name is Clarabelle Stinson. I am 86 years old. And for more than 6 decades, I believed I was the mother of 3 children, the wife of one loyal man, and the cornerstone of a family built on Sunday potlucks, school recitals, and warm front porch laughter. That belief shattered the day I opened a box in our attic. It was a simple cardboard box, taped at the corners, marked in my late husband's handwriting. Tax receipts, 1962 to 1971. I nearly tossed it into the pile for the burn barrel. But something, maybe intuition or maybe the strange hush of that attic air, told me to open it. And inside I didn't find receipts. Found letters. Dozens of them. Yellowed with time. Bound with a ribbon the color of old wine. The handwriting wasn't mine. And neither was the name scrawled across the top one. My darling Everett. Everett. My husband of 57 years. Dead 3 months now. Resting beneath a patch of wildflowers and river stones in the Maplewood Cemetery. The first few lines blurred in my vision as I stared. But the words they cut clear. You promised me you'd tell her. That we'd raise them together when the time was right. But the years keep passing, and I see my babies growing up with a stranger calling herself Mom. My fingers shook. I sat back on the dusty floorboards of that attic as if someone had just pulled the ground out from under me. The letter continued, dated March 1974. 6 years after our first child, Corbin, was born. I'm tired of hiding. Tired of pretending I'm just some mistake you buried. You said you loved me. If you meant it, you'd fight for us. I stared at the envelope. The sender's name was signed only M. The same initial as my childhood best friend, Mavis Lorne. But Mavis died young, car crash in '65. Or so I was told. I opened another letter. Then another. Each one peeled back the lie. A tapestry of deception sewn behind my back for decades. The children I'd fed, bathed, rocked through fevers and heartbreak, were mine in name but not by blood. Everett had raised them with me, loved them with me. But their mother had never truly left the picture. She was writing from afar, watching them, sending him updates on birthdays she never got to attend, letters filled with longing, regret, and a hunger that made my stomach churn. They call her Mama, but I was the one who brought them into this world. Do you even remember that? I slammed the box shut. I wanted to scream, to run down the attic stairs and tear every framed photo from the wall. But what would it change? The truth was already years too late. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with the box at my feet. I watched the shadows stretch across the walls and thought of every scraped knee I'd kissed, every peanut butter sandwich I made for lunchboxes I packed with pride. Had I really been nothing more than a convenient replacement? And why, dear God, why would he do this to me? My hands, worn and weathered, pulled out one more envelope tucked into the bottom corner of the box. This one was different, sealed, untouched, had my name on it. Just my name. Clarabelle. The handwriting was familiar. Everett's. I held it up to the light. It was unopened. Never mailed. Never handed to me. With a breath that tasted like old grief and fresh betrayal, I opened it. If you're reading this, it means I've passed. And it means I was too much a coward to tell you the truth while I was alive. The words that followed made my blood run cold. Because they didn't just confirm the affair. They revealed everything. If this story has your heart racing like mine was that night, make sure you like this video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of this story. The letter was 6 pages long. Every word written in Everett's slanted, careful penmanship. The same handwriting I'd watched 100 times as he signed birthday cards, grocery lists, and anniversary notes over the decades. But this time the words weren't sweet. They weren't safe. They were a confession. Clarabelle, there is no way to justify what I did. No words to excuse it. But before I go, I want you to know the truth. The whole truth. Not because it will make anything right, but because you deserve to know the life you were dragged into without your consent. I read every line with the weight of 50 years pressing down on my chest. He'd met her before he met me. Her name was Maylene. Not Mavis, as I'd briefly wondered. Maylene was 19 when she and Everett fell in love. They were young, poor, and unprepared for the news that followed one warm spring afternoon. She was pregnant. With twins. I panicked, he wrote. I wasn't ready. My father had just died and I had no job, no savings. I told her I needed time, but time turned into distance. I left town, Clarabelle. That's when I met you. I remember it now. The chance meeting at the grocery store. I'd been 22, working the floral counter. He'd bought a bouquet, tulips, and said they were for his mother's grave. He came back the next day. And the next. You were kind. You made me feel like the kind of man I wanted to be, not the kind I actually was. When I found out you couldn't have children, I thought maybe God was giving me a second chance to make things right. Maylene agreed to let me raise the twins as mine. Ours. You didn't know you were adopting them, Clarabelle. But you did. And you did it with more love than I ever deserved. I couldn't breathe. I had spent my entire adult life believing I was barren, yet blessed. I was told by our small-town doctor in 1963 that a childhood illness had made conception unlikely. And Everett, he held me through the tears. Said family wasn't blood, it was love. I never imagined he said that because he already had blood ties elsewhere. And then came Corbin and Lyle. Identical boys. Dropped in our lap like a miracle. He told me a distant cousin passed and left them to our care. You were so happy, he wrote. I couldn't bear to tell you otherwise. I dropped the letter and sobbed. The walls of our bedroom, once filled with decades of safety and warmth, now felt like strangers. Every photograph, every anniversary card, every shared joke and wrinkle-aged memory, it all spun in my mind like a cruel joke. I looked toward the hallway, where portraits of the boys hung. Corbin, now 56, a retired fire chief in Ohio. Lyle, a college professor in Montana. And then there was Maribel, our miracle daughter, born 8 years after the twins. She was mine and Everett's. The doctor had said it was impossible, and then she arrived anyway, full of stubborn spirit and bright eyes. At least her. I ran back to the box, dug through it, and found something worse. A birth certificate. Maribel's. The mother's name wasn't mine. It was Maylene. She had carried all 3 of them. All 3. Every child I had raised, kissed, bandaged, rocked, prayed over. None of them were born of me. But I had been the one awake during their fevers. I had packed their school lunches. I had given up dreams, turned down job offers, stretched every penny during lean times to keep the family whole. And Everett had known. Every second, every year, every time I said, "My babies," he had smiled, and let me believe it. I sat on the floor, knees too stiff to hold me upright anymore. I held that letter to my chest and screamed into a pillow so the neighbors wouldn't call someone. My hands trembled. My voice cracked. But inside me something was hardening. Something was waking up. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was rage. It was betrayal. And under that it was resolve. I wasn't going to stay quiet. Not like he did. They were my children still. But they would hear the truth. What would I say to them? Would they believe me? Would they even care? What happened next will shake the foundation of any family. If you're still with me on this journey, like this video, Leave a comment if you've ever been lied to by the ones you trusted most. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what happens next. I sat on the porch the next morning, the letter still clutched in my lap, though I'd read it so many times I could see the words behind my eyelids. The air was heavy with summer heat, but I barely noticed. All I could feel was the dull ache of betrayal in my chest, and the cold, creeping fear of what came next. How do you tell your children, grown men with families of their own, that you were never the mother they thought you were? How do you say, everything I gave you was real, even if it started with a lie? I'd raised them with truth in my heart. But Everett, he had written our entire story on a lie. I knew I had to start with Corbin. He was the more practical of the two. He'd always been the one to make lists, balance budgets, manage emergencies without panic. If anyone could absorb this, it was him. Called. Rang twice. Then voicemail. I left no message. I didn't know what to say yet. I turned to Lyle next. My sweet, soft-spoken son who read poetry and carried his heart too close to the surface. He answered. Mama. Everything okay? His voice nearly broke me. Lyle, I said carefully. Can you come home? I found something important. Silence. He knew my tone. I'll catch the next flight, he said. 2 days later, all 3 children were in my living room. Corbin had come, though he looked tense, already skeptical. Maribel too. My miracle girl. The one I'd always believed was proof of divine intervention. She sat closest to me, her hand on my knee. I looked at them, 3 people I had built my life around, and I felt my throat close with emotion. I need you to listen, I began. Not interrupt. Not ask questions. Just listen. I read the letter out loud. Every word. Every line of Everett's confession. Every betrayal. Every hidden truth. When I finished, the silence was deafening. I was crying. His hands trembled in his lap. His eyes distant. Corbin stood, his jaw tight. This is crazy. Maribel looked stunned. Wait. He lied to you. All of this time. Nodded slow. I didn't know, I whispered. I didn't know he already had children. I didn't know they weren't orphaned. He told me a cousin had passed. That we were all they had left. Corbin started pacing. So what, you're saying we're adopted? I shook my head. No. I'm saying I raised you. I loved you. I mothered you every day of your lives. But biologically, you're not mine. He turned, his voice sharp. Then who is our mother? Took a breath. Her name was Maylene. She's gone now. Died in 1978. But she carried all 3 of you. Even Maribel looked like she'd been punched. I'm not yours, she whispered. Oh, honey, I said, reaching for her hand. You are mine in every way that counts. I was there when you took your first steps. I held you through your first heartbreak. I stayed up when you had chicken pox. I braided your hair and taught you to drive. That is motherhood. She didn't pull away. But she didn't hold on either. The fallout didn't come in screams. Came in silences. Corbin left first. Said he needed time. Lyle stayed the night. He slept on the old couch, the one he helped me pick out after his freshman year of college. He didn't say much, but before bed he whispered, "You're still my mom." I cried into my pillow that night. The next morning, Maribel sat at the kitchen table, her face pale. "I always felt like I didn't belong," she whispered. "Like I was floating through the family, different somehow. I thought it was just in my head." "It wasn't," I said gently. "But it was never because I didn't love you." She nodded. Then her expression hardened. "So what now? Do we just Pretend again. No, I said. We don't pretend. We rebuild. But Dad's gone. He's not here to answer for any of it. I know, I replied. But I am. And I'm not going to die with this truth still buried. I mailed copies of the letter to the boys. Corbin didn't reply. Lyle did. He sent me an old photograph. One I'd never seen. Me holding him on a park bench, the sun in our eyes. On the back he'd written, "Love is action. You were always there. That's what counts." Maribel started calling more often. She even visited again the next week, bringing lavender tea and an old sweater of mine she borrowed decades ago. But Corbin, still silent. And it was his silence that began to crack something in me. If he didn't want to speak to me as the mother who raised him, maybe he needed to hear from the woman who would no longer carry his silence. I began writing. Not another letter, but something bigger. Record. Voice. Because if my children wouldn't speak the truth, I would. And the world would listen. If you're still watching, don't forget to like this video. Leave a comment below if you've ever had a truth shatter your world, and subscribe for the rest of this journey. I was never one for spectacles. I'd spent most of my life in modest skirts and button blouses, the kind of woman who baked for church picnics and cried at Hallmark movies. I never craved attention, never wanted to stir the pot. But when your world has been rewritten by the dead hand of a husband who wore honesty like a costume, sometimes silence becomes the most dangerous thing you can wear. Started with a phone call. My neighbor's niece, Ava Whitman, was a local news producer. She ran a popular weekend segment called Unfinished Stories, where elders shared memories from the past that had never seen daylight. War brides, adoption secrets, family feuds that split small towns. It was sentimental fluff, really. But something told me maybe my story had a place. Called her. I didn't use dramatic language. Just facts. I said I had a box of letters, 3 children, and a legacy built on lies. I told her I was ready to speak, because no one else ever had. She was at my house the next day. And 2 weeks later, I sat in front of a small camera crew in my own living room, wearing a blue blouse Everett once complimented but never truly saw. The lights clicked on. And I began. I met Everett Barnell in 1955. He was tall, charming, had a laugh that could charm a room quiet. He told me he had no family, that a cousin died young and left behind 3 orphan children who needed a home. I believed him. I married him. I raised those children as my own. The producer nodded gently, encouraging me on. But last year after he passed, I found a locked safe in his closet. Inside were birth certificates, letters, photographs, and a name, Maylene Fields. The woman he never mentioned. The real mother of our children. I held up one of the letters, Everett's handwriting etched across yellowing paper. He took them from her. Maybe not by force, but certainly by deception. And when she passed, he buried her memory too. Pause. My children don't know what to do with this truth. One of them won't speak to me. But I'm done carrying the burden of his lies. I loved them with everything I had. But they deserve the truth. And I do too. The segment aired 3 days later. I didn't watch it live. But my phone rang before sunrise the next morning. Ava's voice was nearly shaking. Eunice, it went viral. Over 2 million views already. We've never had anything like it. I didn't know what to say. Until the calls started coming. From old friends who never knew. From strangers who said they'd grown up under secrets too. From a woman in Ohio who said her mother also knew Maylene Fields. But the call that made my hands shake the most came from Corbin. I saw it, he said quietly. I didn't know what tone to expect. anger, disgust, disbelief. But it was none of those. It was something heavier and softer. I was angry, he said. Not because of what you did, but because I didn't want to believe he lied to all of us. And I didn't want the world to know that our family wasn't what I'd always told people it was. I stayed silent. I needed to protect that image, he said. But maybe it was never real. He exhaled. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything right now, I replied. Just keep walking through it. One truth at a time. He hung up after a while. Didn't say he forgave me. Didn't say he was coming home. But it was the first time he'd spoken to me in over 2 months. Maribel came by that evening with groceries I didn't need and a quiet apology in her eyes. Do you think he ever really loved us? She asked. Thought about it, then answered honestly. I think he loved what we gave him. Loyalty, stability, a clean slate. But love that starts with lies never grows right. It warps. She nodded slowly. I still love you, she whispered. Even if everything else feels upside down. I know, baby, I said, pressing my hand to hers. And I love you no matter what the DNA says. That night, I opened the last of Everett's letters. One I'd avoided until now. The envelope was marked only with my name. Inside was a single page. No excuses. No poetry. Just this. You were the best thing I ever did right. I never told you the truth because I knew I didn't deserve the life you gave me. I folded it gently. No anger came. Just a wave of something. Quieter. Better. Had been plan B. But I'd made it into a life worth living. And now the truth wasn't a shame anymore. It was a reckoning. And I wasn't done yet. If this moment moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever uncovered a family secret? Let's talk about it. The house was too quiet that morning. No birdsong outside the kitchen window. No clink of teacups or hum from the radio. Just the low, steady ticking of the mantel clock and the weight of the envelope in my hand. It had arrived by registered mail, addressed to me in tight, slanted handwriting. No return address. But I recognized the name inside instantly. Maylene Fields. Or rather her daughter, Isla Fields. I believe we may be sisters, the letter began. Half or full I don't know yet. But I think your husband raised my siblings. And my mother, Maylene, was never missing. She was silenced. My breath stopped. The rest of the letter was soft, careful. Isla hadn't written in anger. She wrote in ache. She'd grown up in foster care. Raised by a kind woman who passed away when Isla was in her teens. She'd never known her mother. Only heard rumors that Maylene had been in love with a man named Everett Barnell, and that she'd had children who were taken, one by one, until Maylene vanished from public record entirely. I only found your name when the news segment aired, Isla wrote. And I wept, not because you did anything wrong, but because, for the first time in my life, I saw a woman brave enough to speak where no one else had. She asked nothing of me. Just offered a number and a line. If you ever want to know the rest of her story, I would be honored to share it with you. The next week moved in slow ripples. Corbin came to visit. Just showed up at the door with a bouquet of daffodils from the farmer's market, like it was still 1987 and he was bringing me flowers after a spelling bee. We didn't speak about Everett right away. We sat. We drank tea. We watched the wind move through the maple trees. Finally he said, I think I hated him. Not for the lie. But for what it made me feel about myself. He nodded. He built you a house of mirrors. Corbin's eyes filled, but he didn't let the tears fall. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who made dinner and helped with homework and sat through the late-night asthma attacks. That's real. That's love. I wasn't your birth mother, I said softly. But I never loved you with anything less than a full heart. He looked at me and said, You are my mother. Full stop. We invited Isla to dinner. Just me, Corbin, Maribel, and her. It was quiet at first, awkward even, like crossing a bridge none of us had the tools to build. But then Isla pulled out an old photograph of Maylene. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with dark, wavy hair and a dimple in her left cheek that mirrored Corbin's perfectly. She wrote journals, Isla said. I brought a few. We passed them around. Read passages aloud. One entry hit me in the chest. He promised me we'd raise them together. Then he stopped answering my letters. And one day the number was disconnected. I'd already lost custody once. Now I had no one to fight for me. Silence followed. Then Maribel stood. She walked to Isla, wrapped her in a hug so long, so real. I heard Isla sob against her shoulder. Welcome home, Maribel whispered. Over the next few months we learned to talk again. We didn't erase Everett. But we stopped protecting his version of the story. We honored Maylene. And slowly Isla became part of our lives. She taught Corbin how to make gumbo like their mother used to. She brought old cassette tapes of Maylene's favorite jazz songs. We laughed. We cried. We healed. The final decision came on a spring morning. I sat at my desk, wrote one last letter, and sealed it in an envelope. The lawyer helped me make it official. The inheritance Everett had structured so carefully had been altered. I divided my estate evenly. Not just between Corbin, Maribel, and George, but 4 ways. Isla's name was inked on the page. She had no claim legally. But morally, spiritually, she was my daughter too. She may not have lived in my house, but she now lived in our hearts. And that was more permanent than any will. As I write this now, the sun is setting over the same kitchen where I once read Everett's letters and felt like my soul had been ripped out. But here's what I know. Secrets rot in silence. Lies fester in corners. But the truth can bloom in even the most broken soil. I raised children with love and loyalty. And now, for the first time, we are a family rooted in truth. Not illusions. Not lies. Just love, the real kind. And if you're out there, holding secrets in your hands like ticking time bombs, let me tell you this. You are stronger than what they hid. You are more than what they erased. Speak it. Write it. Share it. Because sometimes, the truth is the most powerful inheritance we can ever pass down. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have you ever uncovered a family truth that changed everything? Share your story below. We read every single one. And remember, sometimes the truth doesn't break us, frees us. Thank you for watching.